We may remember playgrounds from our childhood. We know exactly what they looked like, whether there were swings or slides, roundabouts or sand pits. Perhaps we cried when we fell over or argued with another child when they destroyed our sandcastle. But playgrounds around the world don't always look the same. What is it like in Germany?
Welcome to YD. Why do Germans do things the way they do?
We know that children have always played. Toys are known to have existed in ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome, and in addition to clay dolls, there must have been something cuddly that children could snuggle with when their mum or dad wasn't around. But as often the case with fabric, it is often rotten away over the centuries. In this painting by the Flemish painter Peter Bruegel the Elder from 1560, shortly after the end of the Middle Ages, we see many children with all kinds of toys or playing all kinds of children games. There were no playgrounds specifically designed for this purpose at that time. For many years, children simply played in the streets. With increasing industrialization, more people were drawn to the city, resulting in less space, more traffic, and more children. In the 19th century, attempts were made to find safe spaces for children. At the same time, the educator Friedrich Fröbel, who can also be described as the father of the kindergarten, I have shown here what German kindergartens are like, recognized that children development begins early and that play and experience is very important for children. The physician Bernhard Friedrich Faust wanted to create better living conditions for people and devised the Sonnenbaulehre, sun construction theory, an architectural theory with lots of light and air, inviting front gardens and supervised playgrounds. Thus, the first playgrounds were built in these protected areas in the cities, which were actually just a large pile of sand. To make them a little neater, the sand was enclosed with boards and the sandpit was born. Over time, both the insights into the value of children's play and the sandpit spread worldwide. Gradually, more play equipment appeared in these playgrounds, such as swings, slides, and climbing frames. This remained largely unchanged until the end of the Second World War. From the 1950s onwards, playgrounds began to be experimented with. For example, the American boxer and artist Joe Brown invented the climbing spider, which has evolved somewhat over the years. In the 1970s, adventure playgrounds were created where children could build their own play equipment, sometimes using tools and nails. However, protruding nails also had disadvantages, so also children were allowed to saw or hammer things together under supervision in nurseries. This did not prove successful in playgrounds. Some people, especially from the USA, find German playgrounds dangerous, even though there are regulations for safety. There are standards for equipment and specifications from the accident insurance company, which is a largely unknown social insurance institution in Germany. But for a possible fall height of 60 centimeters, which almost exactly 2 feet for US Americans, the ground must be suitable for cushion the fall. Between 60 centimeters, 2 feet, and 1 meter 50, 5 feet, a grass surface is sufficient. Above a possible fall height of 1 meter 50, something softer is needed, such as sand, gravel, or wood chips, with a layer thickness of at least 20 centimeters. In addition, experts such as TÜV or DEKRA inspect the playgrounds after construction and then once a year, and the operator, usually the city, must inspect a heavily used playground daily and carry out and keep track of regular functional tests. Popular material for playground equipment in Germany are steel and wood, one durable, the other natural. Of course, there are playgrounds and equipment for different age groups. A teenager is unlikely to play in a sandpit, and a toddler is unlikely to climb a climbing frame, at least not very high. I always said my children, if you can climb up on your own, you can use it. Some parents also help their children climb up if they are still too small. Special playgrounds also have very unusual play equipment, perhaps the highest or longest slide, the highest climbing frame, or the longest zip line. Sometimes it is also said that certain equipment is only suitable for children above a certain age. Can they fall off? Of course. But it's just how it is, and it teaches them to assess risks. And the children also look out for each other. While a 3-year-old toddler might walk very slowly across a suspension bridge and hold on tight, a 6-year-old would run across it quickly. But I almost always see older children suddenly stop when a smaller child is there and wait or walk slowly themselves so that nothing happens to the smaller child. That's how you learn social responsibility. But what if a smaller child goes on the slide for the big kids? A child under 6 is rarely left alone in an unfamiliar playground. In familiar playgrounds, I have told the child what they are and what they are not allowed to do. And honestly, how far can a small child walk or cycle? I have agreed with the child where they are allowed to go and where they are not. Anyone who thinks a child is still too young to understand this will just have to accompany their child, and parents who think their child is capable of this, their big brother or 12-year-old cousin who is visiting, will keep an eye on them and allow their child to do so. So if something happens, they're usually adults at playgrounds too. And also, they are primarily there for their own children. They always keep an eye on things. If another child is being too rough, you see if their parents are dealing with it. If not, you talk to the child at latest when your own child comes near them. And if another child suddenly cries, and you know from experience that they have really hurt themselves or are just angry, then you also check on the child. And if no one is there, not even the cousin mentioned above, but the little one has fallen off the swing and hits her head, then you ask the child or the cousin if you can call or fetch their parents, or you call an ambulance to be on the safe side. That's the advantage of having compulsory health insurance. Everything else is taken care of. And what if the child gets a splinter because it was sticking out of the wood? What should be done then? Then you pull out the splinter or go to the doctor. Then you inform the city or whoever operates the playground that there are splinters sticking out of a piece of equipment. And if you are still there, you warn other children or parents about the spot. Hopefully, the operator will sand down the spot immediately or the next day at latest, or if necessary, block off the equipment and, in worst case, dismantle it. In this context, you should check with your child and yourself to see if your tetanus vacation are up to date and still provide protection. If I'm not mistaken, you can still be vaccinated against tetanus shortly after the injury, but again, it's better to ask your doctor. But who is liable in the event of accidents? If the operator has failed to comply with the traffic safety obligations and this has resulted in an accident, the operator may be liable. For example, if the surface layer is too thin or a piece of equipment was not sufficiently secured. The trees in the surrounding area must also be checked to ensure that they are still healthy and do not have any dead branches that could fall down. The general structure is also important. For example, a city was sued because it had installed a carousel for small children in an outdoor swimming pool with a bare metal base plate, causing a child to burn their feet in the summer. However, if the playground was properly maintained and the child simply fell off the swing while using it properly, then no one is likely to be liable. If another child pushes your child, it depends on how old the other child is. I have a video here about the different legal rights and obligations depending on age. And what about the parent's duty of supervision? Depending on the age, parent does not have to be there all the time to watch. It always depends on how independent and sensible the child is. However, constant supervision is necessary for a 2.5-year-old toddler. On school playgrounds during school hours, the school's accidents insurance usually covers the costs. Whether this insurance then seeks recourse against someone else is a completely different question. In the case of all injuries, the financial aspects are initially handled by health or accident insurance companies. Incidentally, when we talk about compensation costs or recourse claims, we are talking about hundreds of thousands of euro, rarely 10,000 for medical expenses and transport costs. In Germany, there are no millions in damage for unproven injuries or pain and suffering. But enough about damage. It's all about exercise and having fun doing it. So, if the weather is still good and it's not too dark yet, why not take your child to the playground for a small bit of fun? Some playgrounds even have equipment or fitness equipment for adults. Remarks, addition, and comments in the comments. Thank you for your attention. See you in the next video.